Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to catch every twist of this shocking story. You won't want to miss a single chapter. It was a quiet night in the small town of Edgewood, the kind of night where every creak of the old wooden floor sounded like a warning. Nathaniel Harper, a man who had built his life carefully, meticulously, suddenly felt that someone was watching him. At 65, he'd seen enough to know when things didn't feel right. Tonight, the air felt wrong. Nathaniel had been retired for nearly a decade, a former attorney who had closed cases that some believed were unsolvable. But tonight, he was off the grid, alone in his lakeside cabin, trying to enjoy the silence. That silence shattered with the faint rustle at the back door. He froze. For a moment he debated ignoring it. Maybe it was the wind, maybe a deer, but instinct screamed otherwise. Slowly he reached for the baseball bat he kept under the bed, moving silently toward the door. "Who's there?" he called, his voice steady, betraying none of the tremor in his hands. No reply, just a soft, deliberate step on the deck outside. Nathaniel's heart pounded. He edged closer to the door, peering through the glass. A shadow shifted, and for a split second he thought he saw someone standing there, motionless, almost waiting. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the figure vanished into the darkness. He exhaled sharply, telling himself it was nothing. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe he was imagining things. But as he turned to go back inside, a slip of paper lay on the welcome mat. He didn't remember seeing it before. With cautious hands, he picked it up. Written in bold black ink were just 3 words: "I know you." The words weren't just a statement. They were a threat, a promise, a warning. Nathaniel's pulse raced as memories he'd buried deep began to surface. Cases, judgments, enemies, people whose lives had been destroyed by his courtroom victories. Faces he hadn't seen in decades, all flashing before his eyes. He knew immediately someone had come back for revenge. Before he could react, his phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Do not ignore me. Midnight. Alone. Outside." Nathaniel swallowed hard. He had spent years preparing for legal battles, for boardroom confrontations, for public scrutiny, but nothing had prepared him for this. Alone, vulnerable, and being hunted in the very house he thought was safe. He moved toward the window, trying to catch a glimpse of the intruder. Nothing, just the moonlight reflecting off the lake. But then a faint shadow shifted near the trees, unmistakably deliberate. Nathaniel's mind raced. Was it someone seeking revenge for a case he'd won long ago, or someone he didn't even know? Either way, it was no ordinary night, and he knew that the moment he stepped outside, his life could change forever. A sudden knock at the front door made him jump. This time, it was slow, deliberate, taunting. Nathaniel backed away, gripping the bat tightly. He'd faced criminals, liars, and cheats in courtrooms, but tonight was different. Tonight, there were no rules. Tonight, he was the target. And then, just as he was about to call the police, the power in the cabin went out. The room plunged into darkness. Silence, but not the comforting kind, a suffocating, eerie quiet. Nathaniel Harper, a man who had never lost control, suddenly realized he wasn't in control at all. Outside, the shadow moved closer, closer, and then It stopped. The words echoed in his mind, chilling him to the bone. I know you. And Nathaniel knew, whatever came next, there would be no turning back.
If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. This story is just getting started, and you won't want to miss the twists coming next. Nathaniel Harper stood frozen in the darkness, the bat heavy in his hands. The power outage had turned his cozy cabin into a shadowy labyrinth. Every familiar corner seemed alien, threatening. Outside, the night was alive with whispers he couldn't place. Wind, rustling leaves, or someone deliberately moving through them. A sudden, sharp knock on the door made him jump. It wasn't the casual knock of a neighbor. It was deliberate, insistent, almost mocking. Nathaniel gritted his teeth. Whoever it was, they weren't here for small talk. He moved cautiously to the window, trying to see through the gloom. There, a silhouette stood in the faint moonlight, tall, lean, and completely still. Nathaniel's pulse quickened. Something about the posture. It was confident, almost predatory. The intruder didn't speak. No words, no warnings, just the heavy, silent presence. Nathaniel knew one thing for certain. This wasn't random. Someone had been planning this, watching, waiting. His mind raced back decades to cases he had won, battles he had fought, and enemies he thought long gone. Faces he had overlooked in court flashed in his mind. Someone had returned, and they weren't asking for mercy. Nathaniel tried to reason. Who are you? What do you want? Nothing. Just silence. A second knock, louder, more forceful this time, rattled the door frame. Nathaniel's hands trembled as he tightened his grip on the bat. Something inside him screamed that waiting was dangerous. Then, unexpectedly, a note slid under the door. Nathaniel froze. The handwriting was sharp, deliberate. Tonight, you pay. He swallowed hard. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had come to Edgewood with a purpose, and Nathaniel Harper was it. The wind picked up outside, shaking the trees, sending shadows dancing across the walls. Nathaniel moved closer to the door, squinting to see beyond the glass. A figure stood motionless, just outside the porch light's reach. And then, slowly, it disappeared. Panic surged. Nathaniel had fought in courtrooms, faced down mob bosses, and survived dangerous deals, but nothing had prepared him for the fear of someone knowing everything about him. Someone who wasn't asking questions. They were making a statement. A soft creak behind him made him spin. The cabin's old wooden floors groaned under nothing. Or was it someone moving in the shadows? He couldn't tell. His mind raced. Could the intruder already be inside? He edged toward the back door, heart pounding, every nerve on fire. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again, screen lighting the dark room. A text from the same unknown number. I'm closer than you think. Nathaniel froze. His breaths came shallow, fast. The threat was no longer outside. It was somewhere inside. Every instinct he had learned in a lifetime of courtroom battles told him this was dangerous. He needed a plan, but the house, his sanctuary, felt like a trap. Then he heard it, a soft, deliberate whisper from the dark corner of the living room. Hello, Nathaniel. His blood ran cold. That voice, it was calm, controlled, but filled with menace. A voice that knew every move he'd ever made. A voice that promised retribution. Nathaniel raised the bat, slowly, carefully. Who are you? He demanded, trying to keep his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. The figure stepped forward, still partially in shadow, but enough to reveal a stranger with piercing eyes and a faint, knowing smile. "You'll find out soon enough. But first, you need to remember everything you did." Before Nathaniel could react, the lights flickered back on, and the intruder was gone. Just like that. The room was empty, the cabin silent, except for the rapid thump of his own heart. Nathaniel sank onto the couch, shaking. Someone had entered his life, unraveling it piece by piece. And the worst part? He had no idea what was coming next. To be continued. Chapter 3 reveals the first shocking link from Nathaniel's past. Subscribe so you don't miss the secrets that will change everything.
Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe. Each twist in this story is about to get darker, and you won't want to miss a single moment. Nathaniel Harper couldn't sleep. The night had swallowed him in restless thoughts, every shadow in the cabin now appearing sinister. The whisper, the note, the vanished intruder, it all replayed in his mind like a haunting film he couldn't pause. By dawn, he decided he couldn't wait. He had to know who was behind this and why now. Pulling on his coat, he stepped outside. The morning air was cold, sharp, biting, and yet it gave him a clarity he didn't have in the dark. He scanned the perimeter of the property. Nothing. No footprints, no sign of forced entry, just the wet remnants of last night's rain. He returned inside, tension coiling in his chest like a live wire. Sitting at his desk, he began digging. Old files, business records, court cases, any hint that might explain the visitor. And then, among the stacks, he found it. An old lawsuit from 20 years ago. A case he had barely remembered. A company ruined. A family left destitute. The lead plaintiff? Harper Industries. The defendant? Nathaniel Harper himself. As he read the faded documents, a chill ran down his spine. The case had seemed trivial at the time. A minor business dispute, blown out of proportion by one desperate family. He hadn't thought much of it. But now, reading the names, dates, and damages claimed, he realized something. This wasn't random. Someone from that past had returned. Someone who had been waiting, biding their time. A knock at the front door jolted him. Not the polite knock of a neighbor or colleague, but deliberate, insistent. He froze. Could it be the same person? Slowly, cautiously, he approached, bat ready. Outside was a single envelope laying on the porch, neatly placed. No footprints this time, no one in sight. Hands trembling, he picked it up. Inside was a photograph, aged, sepia-toned, but unmistakable. It showed a man standing in front of Harper Industries 20 years ago, with a young boy clinging to his leg. Nathaniel's stomach twisted. He knew that boy. He had crossed paths with him briefly, never thinking it mattered, never realizing the deep resentment he was sowing. On the back of the photograph, a single sentence was scrawled. "You took everything from him. Now it's my turn." Nathaniel felt as though the air had been sucked from the room. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate, and chillingly familiar. But from where? Before he could gather his thoughts, the lights flickered again. A low mechanical hum began somewhere in the cabin. The thermostat? No, it wasn't normal. It was deliberate. The hum grew louder, almost like a countdown. Panic clawed at him. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. A video message. Hesitant, he tapped play.
The footage was shaky, but clear enough to make his blood run cold. The camera showed the cabin's interior, every corner, every room. Nathaniel himself on the couch, unaware of the camera. And then the final frame, a shadow moving behind him, just barely visible, but unmistakable. A message appeared on screen. "You see, Nathaniel, you've always been a step ahead of everyone, but I've been waiting, and now the game begins." He dropped the phone, heart racing. Someone knew him better than anyone ever should. They knew his routines, his habits, even the layout of his cabin. Someone had studied him, learned him, and was orchestrating this from the shadows. A sudden creak from the stairs made him spin. Nothing. Silence. But he knew better. The intruder wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. As he reached for the bat again, a faint note slid under the door. "Tonight, you'll remember the past in a way that will change everything." Nathaniel's hands shook as he picked it up. He knew this was no ordinary threat. This was personal, and the suspense, the fear of what awaited, was just beginning.
Before we begin, make sure to subscribe. Every twist in this story will leave you questioning who's really in control. The hum from the cabin hadn't stopped. Nathaniel Harper stood frozen, the envelope and photograph still clutched in his hands. Every instinct screamed at him that someone was here, inside his home, but the silence that followed was suffocating. He slowly moved toward the living room, each step careful, measured, eyes scanning every shadow. The thought that someone could have been inside while he was asleep made his blood run cold. The logs of his past, the lawsuit, the boy from 20 years ago, it was all colliding in a perfect storm of fear. Suddenly, the lights went out completely. The cabin was swallowed in darkness. Nathaniel's heart raced as he fumbled for a flashlight, his hands trembling. When he finally flicked it on, the beam cut across the room, but the room was empty. Or so it seemed. A whisper drifted through the air, almost too faint to hear. "You shouldn't have ignored the past, Nathaniel." He spun around, shining the flashlight in every direction. Nothing, but the words echoed in his mind, sending a chill down his spine. Someone was in the room with him, someone who knew exactly how to get under his skin. Then, from behind the staircase, a figure emerged. Not a shadow, not a blur, someone fully human. Nathaniel froze. The face was partially covered, but the eyes were unmistakable. They belonged to a man who had spent his life planning revenge. Someone who had waited years for this moment. "You finally see me," the figure said, calmly, almost mockingly. "I've been waiting for you to notice." Nathaniel tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. He wanted to demand answers, to confront, to fight, but fear had paralyzed him. "Who are you? What do you want?" he managed to choke out. The figure stepped closer. "I am the consequence of your greed. I am the son of the man whose life you destroyed decades ago. And now, Nathaniel, now it's your turn to feel what we felt." The words hit him like a sledgehammer. He remembered the lawsuit, the ruined company, the faces of those he had dismissed, ignored.
But he'd never imagined that someone had survived the ruin, someone who had been carefully planning for this day. I didn't know," he whispered, desperation in his voice. "I didn't know it would come to this." "You never do you?" the man said, a hint of malice creeping into his tone. "You always think you're untouchable, but tonight you'll see. You'll remember everything you took, everything you ruined." Before Nathaniel could react, the lights flickered back on. The intruder vanished. No noise, no sign of forced entry. Only a single playing card left on the coffee table. The King of Hearts. His hand shook as he picked it up. His mind raced. Why a card? Why this symbol? Then it hit him. The king, the symbol of power, control. Someone was telling him that this was a game, and he was already inside it. The cabin seemed smaller now, suffocating. Every shadow, every creak, every whisper could be another move in the game. Nathaniel realized this wasn't just about revenge. It was about control, humiliation, fear. The intruder wanted him unbalanced, paranoid, weakened before delivering the real blow. As he sat on the couch, holding the card, a new sense of dread filled him. He was no longer the man calling the shots. Someone else was leading the game now, and they were patient, meticulous, unstoppable. A notification buzzed on his phone. Unknown number. Another video message. With trembling hands he tapped play. The video showed the front door, the driveway, and then him, just sitting there, tense, holding the King of Hearts. And then the shadow returned, standing silently behind him, this time unmistakable, a silhouette he would never forget. The message flashed on screen. "Every king falls, Nathaniel. Yours is next." He dropped the phone, heart pounding, sweat breaking on his forehead. The reality sunk in. This wasn't just an intrusion. It was a warning. The real game had begun. And Nathaniel Harper had no idea how dangerous the next move would be.
Before we begin, make sure to subscribe. Every revelation in this story will keep you questioning who you can trust. Nathaniel Harper couldn't move. His body felt frozen, as if the warning had rooted him to the spot. The King of Hearts lay on the floor, mocking him. Whoever had sent the video knew his every move, his every thought. Every moment of his life had been catalogued, studied, weaponized. He tried to shake it off, telling himself it was just fear, just paranoia. But the intruder wasn't done. A soft chime on his laptop drew him to the dining table. An encrypted email. No sender name, only a subject line. "Do you remember him?" Nathaniel hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. He knew better to open it casually, but curiosity and fear won. The screen flickered to life. A video began to play. The footage was old, grainy. It showed a small office from decades ago. Nathaniel's younger self sat behind the desk, reviewing a contract. Across from him was a man in his early 20s, papers in hand, nervous, cautious. The man's face made Nathaniel's blood run cold. It was him, the son, the one standing in the cabin days ago. The boy whose father Nathaniel had crushed in the ruthless drive to expand his empire. "Do you see, Nathaniel?" the video whispered, though no voice was recorded.
Subtitles appeared on the screen. "I've waited. I've watched. Every step you took. Every family you destroyed. I've counted the days. And now the game begins." Nathaniel's mind raced. He thought the past was buried. He thought the lawsuit, the bankruptcy, the humiliation of the people he destroyed had been long forgotten. But it hadn't. Someone had survived. Someone had remembered. The screen flickered again. A second video played, showing a room filled with photographs, companies he had ruined, families displaced, faces of despair. Each image had dates scribbled underneath, like a meticulous timeline of his misdeeds. And then, in the center, a larger photo of a man, now older, hardened, vengeful, the intruder. Nathaniel felt his stomach turn. His empire, his success, his power, they were meaningless here. The man in the video had the advantage: knowledge, patience, and intent. Then a new message appeared on the screen. "Meet me, or watch everything you love crumble." The timestamp showed tomorrow night, 8 p.m. A location appeared: remote, isolated, no cameras, no witnesses, just him and the son he thought powerless. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, hands gripping the armrests. The weight of years of greed and arrogance pressed down on him. For the first time in his life, he felt the fear he had always ignored in others. Questions swirled in his mind. Was this just the beginning? How much did the man know? And most importantly, what did he want? Revenge? Money? Or something darker? He couldn't reach out to anyone, not the police, not his associates. If this was personal, the son could manipulate or threaten anyone Nathaniel trusted. This was a trap, carefully laid, and the thought that he had walked blindly into it sent shivers down his spine. The night stretched on. Nathaniel couldn't sleep. Every shadow in his mansion seemed alive. Every sound, the wind through the trees, the creak of the floors made him jump. He replayed the video over and over in his head, studying every movement, every expression, trying to anticipate the next step. And then it hit him. The King of Hearts, the card left in the cabin. A symbol, yes, but also a message. The intruder didn't want to kill him, not yet. He wanted control. He wanted fear. He wanted Nathaniel to feel powerless, just as the families he had destroyed all those years ago. Nathaniel realized that tomorrow night would decide everything. He had to face the man, uncover the truth, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to survive what was coming. But deep down, a terrifying thought lingered. What if this was only the beginning? What if the game had rules he had yet to understand? The storm outside the mansion intensified, rain tapping against the windows like ominous fingers. Lightning flashed, illuminating the King of Hearts pinned to his wall, a constant reminder that power could shift in a heartbeat. Nathaniel Harper, a man who had spent decades in control, now faced the ultimate uncertainty. He had built an empire, but tonight all of it felt fragile. And as the clock struck midnight, he knew one thing for certain. Tomorrow, nothing would ever be the same. To be continued. Chapter 6 will reveal the shocking truth about the son's plan and how far he is willing to go. Subscribe now to stay on the edge of your seat.
Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe
Every twist in this story will leave you questioning who is really in control. Nathaniel Harper stared at the message on his screen as the storm raged outside. The rain pounded the mansion like a relentless drumbeat, echoing the tension in his chest. He knew tomorrow night's meeting wasn't just a casual encounter. It was a test, a reckoning. Every instinct screamed danger. He spent the night pacing, checking every door, every window, imagining worst-case scenarios. Security cameras, guards, encrypted lines, nothing seemed enough. The sun had planned this meticulously. Nathaniel realized he was no longer the predator. He was the prey. By morning, the mansion was eerily quiet. The storm had passed, leaving a thick fog outside, making the world feel distant and unreal. Nathaniel made breakfast mechanically, his mind spinning with strategies. Who was this man now? What was his ultimate goal? And why the King of Hearts? Every detail was calculated. Every message was layered with meaning. As he ate, his phone buzzed. Another encrypted message. Time is ticking. Every second counts. Attached was a photo. Nathaniel's private study, the room where he kept sensitive contracts. A single card lay on the desk. The King of Hearts. A chill ran down his spine. Nathaniel understood now. The sun wasn't just playing a game of fear. He was rewriting the rules. He was demonstrating power over Nathaniel's life, over everything he held dear, and the countdown had begun. By noon, Nathaniel was restless. Guards had been instructed to double security, but he knew the intruder would bypass any ordinary measures. This wasn't about brute force. It was psychological. A game of mind and patience, just like the empire Nathaniel had built over decades. And suddenly, the realization hit him. This son knew him better than he knew himself. Every fear, every weakness had been studied and weaponized. Nathaniel's assistant, Claire, noticed his unease. "Nathaniel, maybe you should rest. There's nothing we can do until the meeting tonight." "I can't rest," he muttered, eyes locked on the King of Hearts card pinned to the wall. "This isn't just a meeting, Claire. It's a trap, and I have no idea what's waiting for me." Hours passed like minutes. Nathaniel prepared meticulously, packing essentials, arranging his thoughts, rehearsing words he might need or might never get to say. The stormy night had left the road slick, and fog enveloped the city. By the time he left the mansion, the world seemed distorted, shadows dancing in every corner. When he arrived at the secluded location, the air was thick with tension. A single light flickered in the distance, illuminating the outline of an abandoned warehouse. Nathaniel's heart raced. Every step toward the door felt like stepping into the unknown. Inside, the room was sparse, illuminated by a single overhead lamp. A table stood in the center, and sitting there, calm and composed, was the man from the videos, the son. He was older now, confident, his eyes reflecting a mix of anger and purpose. The King of Hearts card lay on the table in front of him. "Nathaniel Harper," he said, his voice steady, controlled. "You've built an empire on the backs of people like my father, on lies, greed, and destruction. Do you know what it feels like to be powerless?" Nathaniel swallowed hard, words failing him. The room felt smaller, oppressive, and he realized for the first time how vulnerable he truly was. The son continued, pacing slowly. "Tonight isn't about killing you, not yet. Tonight is about making you see. Every family you ruined, every life you destroyed, it's all accounted for, and you're going to witness it."
Suddenly, a screen flickered to life, displaying faces Nathaniel had forgotten. Faces of the families, their losses, their pain. The son leaned forward. "Do you recognize them? These are the people you thought you could step over without consequence. Tonight, you will understand." Nathaniel's world tilted. This was no longer just revenge. It was revelation, exposure, and judgment all rolled into one. And he knew that once this night ended, nothing about his life would ever be the same. The son's next words were almost a whisper, chilling in their intensity. "You have 24 hours to prepare, Nathaniel. After that, everything you've built will start to crumble." Nathaniel's knees weakened. Every instinct told him to run, to fight, to hide, but he knew he couldn't. He had to face this. He had to survive this night. And deep down, a terrifying thought gnawed at him. What if this wasn't just about him? What if the son's plan was bigger than he could even imagine? The countdown had begun, and Nathaniel Harper realized one undeniable truth. He was no longer in control.
Before we dive in, hit subscribe. Every revelation will leave you questioning who's really in control. Nathaniel Harper returned to his mansion, his mind racing faster than the storm outside. The son's words echoed in every corner of his mind. 24 hours. The countdown wasn't just a threat. It was a challenge, a test of his empire, his power, and his morality. He paced the study, glancing at the walls lined with awards and photos of deals long won. Each artifact, each memory, now felt like evidence against him. He realized that the past he had built his life upon was no longer a shield, it was a target. A sudden knock on the door made him jump. It was Claire, his assistant, holding an envelope. No note, no indication of who sent it. She hesitated. "Nathaniel, this just arrived." He tore it open. Inside, a single photograph. It was him, years ago, meeting a man he didn't immediately recognize. But in the background, the face of a young boy stared at the camera, eyes burning with anger and fear. The boy's expression was hauntingly familiar. Nathaniel's stomach sank. The son's plan wasn't just about revenge. It was about exposing truths Nathaniel had buried. Names, faces, lives he thought were inconsequential were all pieces of a puzzle he hadn't realized existed. He had ignored the human cost of his empire for decades. Now, someone was holding him accountable in a way he couldn't control. Nathaniel's phone buzzed. Another encrypted message. This one was short, almost casual. "Remember your choices. Tonight, the past meets the present." Panic and anticipation collided inside him. He tried to think rationally, to strategize, but the fog of fear clouded his judgment. The son had dissected every move, anticipated every response. He realized he was no longer the hunter, he was the hunted. Hours later, the mansion felt different, alive in an ominous way. Shadows stretched across the hallways like fingers reaching for him. The slightest sound, a creak in the floor, the distant hum of electricity made him jump. He couldn't rest, couldn't sleep. Every moment was a countdown, each tick closer to confrontation. Late at night, Nathaniel decided he needed answers. He accessed his private network, tracing old deals, old faces.
Every connection he had ever made, every company he had ruined, every person who had crossed paths with his empire, it was all there, feeding into the sun's network. He realized this wasn't just personal, it was systematic. The sun was turning his life into a mirror, reflecting every misstep, every cruel choice. Then a knock at the window startled him. Heart racing, he approached cautiously. Outside, a single figure stood in the fog. The silhouette was unmistakable. The sun. Calm, collected, a faint smile on his lips. "Good evening, Nathaniel," the sun said, voice carrying effortlessly over the wind. "I hope you're ready. Tonight, the truth comes home." Nathaniel swallowed hard. "What do you want from me?" he asked, though part of him already knew the answer. The sun stepped closer, eyes locked on him. "I want you to see everything, every choice you made, every life you affected. And when you see it, you'll understand the cost." Before Nathaniel could respond, the sun disappeared into the fog. The mansion felt emptier, colder. Every room, every corner seemed to whisper, "Prepare yourself." Nathaniel sank into a chair, gripping the arms tightly. The realization struck him like lightning. His empire, his power, his carefully constructed life, none of it mattered tonight. What mattered was the reckoning, the confrontation with the consequences he had ignored for so long. And as the clock ticked toward midnight, a faint sound echoed through the mansion, a sound Nathaniel couldn't place. Footsteps? A whisper? Or was it just his own fear manifesting in the shadows? One thing was certain. By tomorrow, nothing would be the same. To be continued. Chapter 8 will reveal the sun's shocking connection to Nathaniel's past and a twist that will leave you questioning everything. Subscribe now so you don't miss a second.
Before we dive in, hit subscribe. Every twist will make you question who's really in control. Nathaniel couldn't shake the image of the young boy in the photograph. The face haunted him, a ghost from a past he thought was buried. He had spent decades building an empire, conquering rivals and crushing obstacles, but now a shadow from the past was rewriting the rules. The mansion felt suffocating. Each tick of the grandfather clock seemed amplified, each echoing like a judgment. He moved cautiously through the halls, eyes scanning for anything unusual. But nothing seemed out of place until he reached the library. On the grand oak desk lay an envelope he hadn't noticed before. The handwriting was unfamiliar, sharp, deliberate. He opened it slowly, the paper trembling in his hands. Inside was a single note. "Do you remember the accident, Nathaniel? Do you remember the choices you made that day?" Nathaniel's heart skipped. The accident. He remembered it. The car crash, the lawsuit, the family that had been destroyed because of his ruthless decision to cover it up. For decades, he had suppressed the guilt, hiding it beneath layers of contracts, profits, and power. But now someone had dredged it up. Someone had connected the dots. His phone buzzed. Another message flashed on the screen. "Meet me where it all began. Midnight. Come alone." Nathaniel's pulse quickened. The instructions were clear and terrifying. This wasn't just a confrontation. This was a reckoning. He knew if he followed, nothing would remain hidden. The boy, the man, was going to expose every truth he had buried. Hours later, Nathaniel drove through the stormy streets, rain pelting against the windshield, blurring the city lights. His mind raced with memories he had tried to forget. The screams, the lawsuits, the families ruined by his ambition. He approached the old warehouse on the outskirts of the city, the place where the accident had occurred decades ago. The warehouse was dark, eerily silent. Every step Nathaniel took echoed, amplifying his unease. Then a figure emerged from the shadows. The sun. Taller now, older, but the same intensity in his eyes. Nathaniel froze. "You brought this upon yourself," the sun said, calmly, voice slicing through the cold air. "Do you remember her? Do you remember what you took from me?" Nathaniel's mind raced. He wanted to deny, to explain, but words failed him. The sun stepped closer, revealing a photograph in his hand. It was a picture of a young girl, barely 10, clutching a broken toy. Nathaniel's blood ran cold. "That's my sister," the sun said, eyes burning. "She didn't survive because of your choices, and I've spent my life making sure you remember it every day." Nathaniel staggered backward. I didn't know," he whispered, guilt choking him. The sun shook his head. "Of course you didn't. You never cared about the consequences, but tonight you will see." Suddenly the lights flickered on, illuminating the warehouse in harsh white. Scattered across the floor were old documents, contracts, and photographs, evidence of every life Nathaniel had ruined. His empire, built on greed, now lay exposed. Nathaniel realized with horror that this was more than revenge. This was an education in accountability. Every lie, every betrayal, every innocent life he had disregarded was now confronting him in the cold, empty warehouse. "You think money erases guilt?" the sun asked, voice low but filled with fire. "You think power protects you? Look around, Nathaniel. You're finally seeing the truth, and it's all yours to face." The storm outside intensified, rain hammering the roof as if nature itself was echoing the reckoning inside. Nathaniel's knees buckled. He was surrounded, trapped, not by men, but by the consequences of a lifetime of ruthless ambition. And then the sun took a step closer, holding out a folder. "Inside this are the choices you made that caused my family to suffer. Read them, understand them, and maybe, just maybe, you'll begin to grasp what it means to truly lose." Nathaniel's hand shook as he took the folder. He knew that once he opened it, nothing would be the same. Every secret, every hidden truth, every act of cruelty he had buried for decades would stare back at him unflinching. And at that moment, Nathaniel Harper realized the game had finally changed. To be continued. Chapter 9 will reveal a twist about Nathaniel's own past that even he didn't know. And it will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about him. Subscribe now. Don't miss it.
Before we start, hit subscribe. Every revelation in this chapter will shock you. Nathaniel's hands trembled as he flipped open the folder. The papers inside were brittle with age, marked with scribbles, dates, and signatures he barely recognized. He thought he knew everything about his past, but the truth inside this folder shattered every illusion he had built around himself. As he read, a chill ran down his spine. The accident, the one that had haunted his nightmares, wasn't entirely his fault. Or at least, it wasn't the way he remembered it. The documents revealed that someone else had manipulated events, someone with their own agenda, someone who had used his ambition against him. The son watched him silently, expression unreadable. "Do you see it now? The choices you thought were yours alone were never entirely yours, and yet you still had the power to act differently." Nathaniel swallowed hard. Every page was a puzzle piece of a conspiracy he hadn't even imagined. He had blamed himself for decades, only to realize that he had been a pawn in someone else's game all along. Then he came across a photograph tucked inside the folder. A woman he didn't recognize, standing beside a young boy. And that boy, Nathaniel's heart stopped. It was him. But the woman, there was something familiar about her eyes, her expression. Something he had seen before, somewhere deep in his memories. Who is she?" he stammered, voice barely above a whisper. The son stepped closer, a shadow of a smile crossing his face. "That's your mother, Nathaniel, and that boy is your half-brother. You've been looking for answers in the wrong places." Nathaniel staggered back, disbelief flooding every nerve in his body. Her mother? His half-brother? How could he have missed this? How could the woman in the photograph, the one smiling beside his father, have been part of his life without him knowing it? You're saying I have a brother?" Nathaniel asked, voice shaking, fear and awe colliding in his chest. "Yes," the son said calmly, almost coldly. "And he's been watching, waiting for the right moment, just like I have. He knows the truth about your past, and when the time comes, you'll have to face him." Nathaniel's mind reeled. All this time he had thought he was alone in his battles, that every enemy he faced was external. But now he realized the real threat, the real truth, was internal. His own bloodline, hidden, watching, waiting. The son's gaze hardened. "You've spent decades building your empire, crushing anyone in your path. But the people you destroyed, the lives you ruined, were all part of a chain, and you were never the first link." Nathaniel felt a cold sweat break across his forehead. I don't understand. Who set all this in motion?" The son did not answer. Instead, he handed Nathaniel another folder, thicker this time, filled with old correspondence, contracts, and photographs from years ago. "Read this carefully. Every choice you made, every life you thought you controlled, was influenced. And now, Nathaniel, it's your turn to see the end of the chain." Nathaniel opened the folder, flipping through the documents with shaking hands. The deeper he went, the more the pieces fell into place. Betrayals, secret alliances, hidden enemies within his own family. He realized that the accident, the tragedy that had haunted him for decades, was only the beginning. A much larger game had been in motion all along. The son stepped back, letting Nathaniel absorb the revelation. "You thought you were in control," he said quietly, "but the truth is you never truly were. And now you'll have to decide. Will you let the past destroy you, or will you finally take control of your own destiny?" Nathaniel's head spun. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless, not because of wealth or enemies or betrayal, but because of the truths he never knew, the family he never understood. And somewhere deep inside, he realized that his fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. The storm outside intensified, rain hammering against the warehouse roof, echoing the chaos in Nathaniel's mind. and as he stared at the photographs, the letters, the evidence, he knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same. To be continued. Chapter 10 will reveal the shocking identity of Nathaniel's half-brother and the hidden motives that could change everything. Subscribe now. Don't miss the next twist.
Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe. Every revelation in this chapter will leave you on the edge of your seat. Nathaniel's hands were still trembling as he stared at the folder the son had given him. Every document was a key unlocking a past he thought he knew, but had only scratched the surface of. The photographs of the mysterious woman, the one he now knew was his mother, and the boy beside her, haunted him. He could barely comprehend that he had a half-brother, someone he had never met, someone whose existence had been kept secret for decades. A knock at the door made him jump. His heart pounded in his chest as the son stepped aside, allowing a tall figure to enter the room. The man's face was partly shadowed, but Nathaniel immediately felt a strange familiarity, a pull he couldn't explain. "You must be Nathaniel," he said, his voice calm but edged with something sharp. "I'm Alexander." Nathaniel froze. "Alexander?" he repeated, disbelief twisting his voice. "Yes," Alexander replied, stepping fully into the light. "Your brother, the one you never knew existed. And trust me, you're going to wish you did." Nathaniel's mind raced. Questions collided with shock. How could his father have hidden him? Why now? And most importantly, why did Alexander suddenly appear? Alexander's eyes were icy, calculating, yet there was a flicker of something that looked almost like pity. "You've spent your life thinking you controlled everything. You built empires, destroyed people, made enemies, but you didn't know the half of it. And now, the real game begins." Nathaniel's pulse quickened. "What do you mean? What game?" he demanded, fear and curiosity battling inside him. Alexander smiled faintly, a shadow of amusement crossing his face. "The game of legacy, Nathaniel. Our father left more than just secrets. He left choices. And for years we've been on opposite sides without even knowing it. Your life, your successes, they were just pieces of a puzzle. And now you've stumbled into the final pieces." Nathaniel felt the ground shift beneath him. Every decision he had made, every risk he had taken, suddenly felt meaningless. He had thought he was the master of his fate, but now he realized he had been a pawn, just like so many others. "Why now?" Nathaniel asked, voice trembling. "Why reveal yourself after all these years?" Alexander took a step closer, eyes locked on Nathaniel's. "Because you're finally ready to understand, and because the people who manipulated both of us are still out there. They've been waiting, and they need us, together or apart, to make the next move. And you have to choose. Ally with me, or risk losing everything you fought for." Nathaniel's head spun. Everything was happening too fast. The betrayal of the past, the revelation of his brother, the hidden enemies. He couldn't tell who to trust, who to fear. But there was one thing he knew for certain. Alexander was dangerous, and he had secrets that could destroy Nathaniel's entire world. The air in the room felt heavier, charged with tension. Nathaniel wanted to speak, to demand answers, but Alexander didn't give him a chance. He pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket
and handed it to Nathaniel. Everything you need to know about what's coming is inside. Read it carefully, and remember, once you open it, there's no going back. Nathaniel's hands shook as he accepted the envelope. The weight of what lay inside seemed almost physical, pressing down on him. He knew the moment he opened it, his life would change forever. Alexander stepped back, the shadow of a smile lingering. The clock is ticking, Nathaniel. The people who set this in motion are still watching, and they won't wait for you to catch up. Decide quickly, or be swept aside. Nathaniel looked at the envelope in his hands, the paper thick, almost alive with the power of the secrets it contained. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he realized that this was bigger than anything he had ever faced, bigger than business, bigger than betrayal. This was family, legacy, and a game that had been playing for decades. As he slowly opened the envelope, the first page revealed a name that made his blood run cold, a name he had trusted, a name that could unravel everything. The twist was only beginning. Chapter 11 will reveal the shocking betrayal within Nathaniel's inner circle and the identity of the person who has been manipulating events all along. Subscribe now. Don't miss it.
Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe. This chapter will reveal a shocking betrayal that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Nathaniel's hands trembled as he stared at the first page of the envelope. The name, written in bold, unmistakable letters, made his chest tighten. It was someone he had trusted, someone he considered an ally, maybe even a friend. The weight of the revelation hit him harder than anything before. "Impossible," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "It can't be." But the documents didn't lie. Every detail, emails, secret bank transfers, hidden meetings, painted a picture of manipulation, deceit, and betrayal. His so-called confidant had been orchestrating events behind the scenes, ensuring Nathaniel was always one step behind, always reacting instead of controlling. Alexander stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "You see, Nathaniel," he said calmly, "it wasn't just about hiding me. It was about keeping you in the dark, making you believe you were in control while someone else pulled the strings." Nathaniel's mind raced. Every decision, every move he had made in the past months suddenly seemed meaningless. The empire he had built, the deals he had negotiated, the enemies he had crushed, it had all been manipulated to serve someone else's plan. "Why?" Nathaniel asked, his voice strained. "Why betray me? We've known each other for years. I trusted them." Alexander's eyes narrowed. "Because control is a dangerous game, Nathaniel. And the people you trusted weren't just playing for themselves. They wanted to see how far you'd go, how much you'd risk, and how easily you could be replaced." Nathaniel felt a cold sweat on his forehead. Every instinct told him to act, to confront, to strike back, but he knew he was vulnerable. Every piece of evidence, every secret had been revealed at the perfect moment. He had no choice but to strategize carefully. As he flipped through the envelope, another document caught his eye. A map of locations, names, and dates. It became immediately clear that the betrayal wasn't just personal, it was strategic. Someone was planning to dismantle his empire piece by piece, using him as an unknowing pawn while consolidating their own power. "Whoever this is," Nathaniel said, voice tight with anger, "they're planning something big, and I need to stop it before it's too late." Alexander nodded. "Exactly. But you're not ready to face it alone. That's why I'm here. You've spent your life playing games of control, but now the stakes are higher.
If we don't act, everything you've built and everything you care about will collapse." Nathaniel's heart raced. The betrayal had left him raw, exposed, and furious. But amid the anger, a spark of determination ignited. He wasn't going to let the manipulator win. Not now. Not ever. He folded the documents carefully, his mind already mapping out a plan. "Then we move fast," he said, his voice firm. "We find them, we expose them, and we take back what's ours." Alexander gave a faint, approving nod. "Good. But remember, Nathaniel, the closer you get, the more dangerous it becomes. People you trust, people you thought were loyal, they might turn at any moment. Watch every move, question every word, because the moment you hesitate, it's over." Nathaniel's stomach twisted. The stakes had never been higher. The enemy wasn't just outside, it was inside, hidden, waiting. Every step forward could trigger disaster. He clenched his fists, determination shining through the fear. "Then let's begin," he said. As the two of them stepped into the night, Nathaniel couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching, someone who had orchestrated every move for years. The game wasn't just about power, it was about survival, secrets, and revenge. And he knew deep down that the next twist would change everything. The final chapter of Deception, Danger, and Revelation is coming in Chapter 12. Subscribe now to witness the shocking conclusion that will leave your jaw on the floor.
Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe. This is the chapter where every secret will be revealed, and no one will walk away the same. Nathaniel's eyes scanned the dimly lit warehouse, every shadow a potential threat. The betrayal he had uncovered in Chapter 11 had shaken him to his core, but it had also sharpened him. Every move he made now was calculated, every step a test of wits. He knew the enemy had planned meticulously, but so had he. Alexander, standing just behind him, whispered, "This is it. The person you trusted the most, they're here. Watch closely." Nathaniel's heart thudded in his chest. Years of friendship, loyalty, and alliances all came down to this moment. He knew one wrong move could cost him everything, not just his empire, but his life. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed through the warehouse, cold and deliberate. "Nathaniel, I wondered how long it would take you to find me." From the shadows emerged Elena, his oldest confidant, the person he had never suspected, the one who had orchestrated the entire chain of betrayals. Her eyes glinted with triumph, a chilling smile spreading across her face. "Elena?" Nathaniel stammered, disbelief and rage mixing into one. You set all of this up? All of it?" She took a step forward, the sound echoing ominously. "Of course. I wanted to see if the great Nathaniel could survive when stripped of everything. Every deal you made, every empire you built, it was all part of my experiment. And now finally you've played right into my hands." Nathaniel's mind raced. Every hidden transaction, every sabotage deal, every seemingly random loss, it was her doing. And now, standing face to face with her, she understood the scale of her plan. Alexander whispered urgently, "Don't show fear. This is the final test. Control your moves carefully." Nathaniel took a deep breath, masking his fear with calculated calm. "So this was all about power, to prove you're smarter, stronger, better than me." Elena laughed softly, the sound sending chills down Nathaniel's spine. "Smarter? Perhaps. Stronger? Definitely. But better? That remains to be seen." Suddenly, alarms blared. Nathaniel realized she had triggered a contingency, a countdown on every exit, every security system. They were trapped, just as she had intended. Elena stepped closer, her eyes cold. "You see, Nathaniel, this is the ultimate chessboard, and right now you're in check. Every move you make, it leads to my victory." Nathaniel's mind worked furiously. He needed a twist, a move that Elena wouldn't anticipate. Slowly he began speaking, his voice steady but urgent. "You think you've won, but I've spent months uncovering every secret, tracking every betrayal. You may control the pieces, Elena, but not the board entirely." Elena's eyes narrowed. "What are you—" Nathaniel raised his hand, signaling Alexander, who quietly revealed the second set of documents Nathaniel had prepared. Proof of Elena's manipulation, evidence hidden in plain sight, set to release to the authorities the moment she made her next move. Elena froze. Impossible! In that brief hesitation, Nathaniel acted. He moved with precision, disarming her security triggers, blocking every exit she had planned. The warehouse shook with tension as the countdown reached its final seconds, but Nathaniel's careful preparation had neutralized the danger. "You underestimated me," Nathaniel said, voice firm. Every ounce of his experience and cunning now fully visible. "This game ends tonight, and not in your favor." Elena's expression faltered, then hardened with fury. You think this ends here?" Nathaniel shook his head. "No, but it ends with the truth finally exposed." Within moments, authorities, summoned quietly by Nathaniel days before, stormed the warehouse. Elena, caught completely off guard, was taken into custody. The empire she had tried to dismantle, the manipulation she had orchestrated, it all crumbled around her. Nathaniel exhaled, the tension leaving him slowly. He looked at Alexander, who gave a subtle nod of approval. Months of deception, betrayal, and suspense had finally reached their conclusion. But Nathaniel knew this victory came with a cost. Trust had been shattered, friendships tested, and lives affected forever. Yet for the first time in years, he felt a clarity he hadn't felt in a long time. The true game of power was not about domination. It was about integrity, foresight, and the courage to face betrayal without losing oneself. As he stepped out into the cool night air, Nathaniel felt the weight of every choice, every twist, and every suspenseful moment lift slightly. He had survived. He had won. Not just the battle, but a deeper understanding of himself and the dangerous games people play. The story ends here, but the lessons, the suspense, and the echoes of betrayal will stay with Nathaniel and with you, the audience. If this journey of twists and revelations kept your heart racing, subscribe and share your thoughts below. What would you have done if you were Nathaniel?